Hello everyone. The 3DS store and Wii U eShop are finally shut down. Nintendo gave us a heads up, and now you're gonna find all these physical releases going up in price over time. For now, well, it's the end of an era. There are people out there like the completionists who purchased every digital game out there for archival purposes, but of course, this is also temporary because certain licenses expire over time, and once the license expires, that's it for the product. So the 3DS store and eShop are now gone, and that means a lot of the unique games that are tied to these digital stores are also gone. For example, this was the Super Mario 35th Anniversary Battle Royale game that released as part of Mario's anniversary. It was a really cool novelty, but then Nintendo shut it down. Granted, this was on the Switch, but nevertheless, this is a game that will never be playable ever again because it was tied towards a digital service. And now you'll see games like, well, this is actually a pretty good example. Just wait for Star Fox 64 3DS to go up in price when it comes to physical releases because this is an incredible remake of the original Star Fox 64 from the Nintendo 64. I absolutely love it. The visual design, everything about this game is an improvement from the original. There's also an Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask remake, which are absolutely fantastic. But then you're going to see games like, Metal Gear Solid 3DS, which is exactly the same game. Only difference is that you can take pictures and use that as camo, which is a cool novelty. But and technically there's the 3D function, but nevertheless you can see like it's widely being overpriced. Sometimes you have decent prices like $40, $25, but then you have like $122, $124, $200. Yeah, you're going to see this go up in price. And like I state, some games will get delisted for licensing agreements. Now, this is Transformers War for Cybertron and Fall for Cybertron. These are games that were taken off digital stores because of their licensing agreements, and they're selling for decent price. $40 is not a big asking price, but this is still a niche title. I can see in my channel I have a walkthrough for this game. There are people who are like, "How do I play this game? I can't find it anywhere." Unfortunately, the only way you can play this game is to get a physical copy of the game and then play it that way. I play it on my Xbox 360. The multiplayer you can't access anymore because the 360 has been shut down, but nevertheless, the single player is fantastic. And this is just going to happen more and more often. Now, there are ways that people find to back up their games. They would purchase a physical game like, this is God of War Collection. I got it on eBay, and you can back up your games through processes. And the thing that makes video games such a difficult thing to preserve is because games are extremely large. I'm sure if you've watched like the Game Historian or game developer channels where they showcase the process, games have a certain level of memory, and because of that, one of the most famous examples is Crash Bandicoot, in which the developers actually hacked the PlayStation in order to gain extra RAM in order to play Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation. They had to find very unique ways to fit all the game into the memory slots. But now with the rise of cloud streaming and other ways to basically circumvent the memory limitations you have through online processing, for example, the reason Outriders is online always is because it kind of offsets a lot of the processing power through an online service, which I still think is pretty dumb. I think they should just put the entire game on a disc or something on that line, or downgrade the game if they have to. But either way, that process means that individuals who don't have access to an online connection, or again, if the online service is shut down, that's it. There was also a scare when the PlayStation 4 had an internal clock, and if Sony shut down their PlayStation 4 store, which they're going to do in the future someday, like they tried to do with the PlayStation 3, you can't add funds to the PlayStation 3 service, but you can still buy things on the PlayStation 3 store. You just have to add it to the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 store or through the online account. Nevertheless, there was an internal clock on the PlayStation 4, which meant that if Sony shut down their store and that clock was never able to contact the Sony servers, it would make your system unplayable. The reason I'm adding all of this is because the same process works for games. Now, like I stated, Gerard the completionist purchased all the games on the 3DS and Wii U shop, but the problem is that license agreement will eventually expire. There will be a time where he just can't download the game, because you can still download the game if you purchased it, but eventually that's going to be it. Like, for example, with Steam, if you purchased a game and you no longer have access to it, well, you can still download the game, but you can't, purchase it. So that's going to be a major issue in the future for, these types of unique games that are only available on digital shops. Like with PC games, there are other options. There's emulation, cracking, piracy. I don't advocate for piracy because I just don't. But the problem is that I strongly believe what Gabe Newell once said when it came to Steam. If you give people an easier option that isn't piracy, they will always choose the easier option. If you can purchase a game through legitimate means, people will do it because it's the much easier and safer option. Because even though there are emulation options available, it always carries a risk that your PC can be infected with malware, ransomware, and if you think, oh, that will never happen, then you are an innocent summer child, because it will 100% happen. There are a huge cyber warfare going around every day, and the only reason you're not targeted is because you're not important enough to be targeted. There are very dangerous and intelligent people out there. If they want your stuff, they will get your stuff. And guaranteed, there are people out there who download cracked games and all that. There's always a risk that comes with that. That's why I try to only purchase, stuff from legitimate stores, because my personal information is worth more to me than $60. But when people don't have that option, there was a great video by Uncle Al. In fact, I'll look it up so you can watch it yourself if you want to, in which, of course, it doesn't do that. This is I'm not gonna play it because it's a SpongeBob meme, but either way, he makes a good point about how when this was announced, they were shutting down the eShop and the Wii U shop, was the fact that why don't you release your games on the Nintendo eShop? Because people will pay for those games, but they're like, oh, we just don't have any intention to release them at the moment. They're slowly drip feeding the games through the eShop right now, which is what Nintendo would do, just to get people hyped instead of just releasing the games. But nevertheless, it's going to be a problem in the future when they decide to go all streaming. For example, the reason I purchased the God of War collection, which is the PSP HD remakes of the God of War games. By the way, Chains of Olympus will not work unless you have an official PlayStation 3 controller. If you bought a third-party controller like I did, because Sony doesn't release official PlayStation 3 controllers, you cannot beat God of War Chains of Olympus, because there's a QuickTime event that will not register unless you have an official controller. Thank God my original PlayStation 3 controller works, but yeah. Either way, eventually we're going to go through an all digital age where there's streaming and digital product, which means that we're going to need more space for the games, and Nintendo is notorious for not having enough in their memory cards. Not to mention, like, if you use the PlayStation 5 streaming service, which is what I did, I purchased a $120 service so I could play the original God of War games. It was absolutely trash. Like, the streaming gameplay content was fine, but the audio had this weird background noise for all the games. And I was just like, this is garbage. When the PlayStation 3 versions of these games run superior, then you have a problem. Not to mention, you can't just buy out these games. And you can guarantee this is the way games are going to go for now on. Right now, we have an all-digital Xbox Series, an all-digital PlayStation 5. I wouldn't be surprised if the next Switch, or if they release a Switch that's all, well, I believe that the Switch Lite is all digital. Don't quote me on that. I don't have a Switch Lite. Didn't really interest me at all. But it wouldn't be surprising that 10, 20 years down the line, when I'm like 40 or 50 years old, if I live that long, that we're just going to have all digital content. And a lot of these games are not going to be available in physical releases. Like, again, I've been making the slow transition to digital games because when I realized how much stuff I had to move, when I had to move my entire game collection from point A to point B, I just found the convenience of having an all digital collection that more sound. But then with stuff like this, Nintendo is the one company I refuse to buy digital games from, because unlike Microsoft or Sony or Steam, where they have a somewhat stable track record when it comes to game preservation and accessing your games. Sony, they were going to shut down the PlayStation 3. They shut down the PlayStation Vita store. For Microsoft, even though all these games are available on Xbox Game Pass, some of them are unplayable on an Xbox Series because of the incompatible coding. If you've ever run like Aliens vs. Predator or Alice Madness Returns or Dragon Age Origins on a Xbox Series, you know that the games don't work because the coding is just incompatible. It'll start up the game and then boot you back to the dashboard because to the system the game automatically crashes, so they just boot you back to the original. They really need to resolve that problem, but for now it's a major issue. But when it comes to Nintendo products, they simply, I just don't trust them because again we've just seen this happen so much with the 3DS, the Wii U, and it's going to happen with the Switch when they release a new Switch console where you're not going to be able to access your unique games and you're going to have another troubled state. Either way, I really think that these companies are making it that much harder to access games that should be available all over. And I know a lot of people are going to say, but Adam, they could just release it on PC. It's not going to happen. Nintendo is not going to release it on PC, at least for the time being. I mean, times are changing. Sony is releasing their games on PC for the first time ever. Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted. It's only a matter of time before they start getting into like all the classic games like the God of War franchise and start releasing that on PC, which to me they should, because having to pay for physical releases, get my PlayStation 3, which again, all this hardware is going to eventually fail, and it's just going to be a major issue. And more people who are within the Kraken community, within the emulation community, they're slowly just not finding it worth to even do it anymore, because we've seen that there are companies like Rockstar and Take-Two who go after modders who are trying to preserve these games and sue them to heaven and hell. I mean, granted, they were trying to make a full HD version of Red Dead Redemption and give it away for free, which I can understand why Take-Two would be a little unhappy for that. But guess what? You guys didn't release an HD release of Red Dead Redemption. In fact, it was made, I don't know if they confirmed it or not, but they canceled the upscaling version of Red Dead Redemption 2 for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X because Red Dead Online failed, which is on them. Either way, it's just... if you don't think this will like affect other people over time, it's going to affect everyone, because whatever happened with the 3DS and Wii U shop, for people who want to play games like Star Fox 64 3DS, Xenoblade Chronicles HD, well, I would say a lot of the Wii, Star Fox, I believe Star Fox Zero is only on Wii U as well, even though that game was trash. Still, you're gonna have to get a physical release of those games. It's just tragic because game preservation is one of the most difficult things you can possibly imagine, because unlike music, unlike books, unlike even movies, these files are much larger. Remember when I talked about how Sony had, the developers of Crash Bandicoot had to literally hack the PlayStation in order to get the game onto the system? Games are becoming increasingly larger over time. I'm certain a lot of us have seen this. Some game downloads can be up to 200 gigabytes. The Evil Within 1 is like literally, I think, like 100 gigabytes worth of data. And these game files are so huge that you need dedicated servers in order to host these games. Eventually, it's going to be too much for people to even store these games, unlike a book or a movie or music, which are minuscule in comparison to video games. Even if you get like ultra HD 8K 12K, I don't know, I'm just making up numbers, 16K movie, it's never going to be as big as a huge video game like The Last of Us Part 2. And these games are just going to get more wild, more difficult to access, and eventually we're just going to be into a system where you just buy digital keys, temporarily own the game until finally they shut it down or they change the game, like with GTA, how they completely changed the games based on licensing agreements canceling. It's just a whole hot pot of just crap fest garbage. Nowadays, you can't just even buy a 1.0 game. It always has to be like completely altered in some way. Either way, that's one of my thoughts on the 3DS store shutting down. Tell me what you think. Thank God I got all my physical versions of the games before all of this happened. So if I ever want to play that, and well, let's face it, there are modding channels for the 3DS. The 3DS is very easy to mod. Heck, even Sakurai even posted a video showcasing that how easy it was to mod a 3DS, and that guy's like Nintendo's king right up there with Shigeru Miyamoto. Like, if he says it's easy, anyone can do it, and Nintendo doesn't really care at this point, because let's face it, whatever works, because nowadays, if you're not going to give us easy access to purchase these games, well, we have to find other ways to do it. So this is me speaking my thoughts. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. If you don't like the channel, you can click don't recommend channel. Till next time, goodbye.